EOC.
This is the EOC review terms 181 through 200. The Congress of Racial Equality was influenced by Gandhi and set out to stop racism. Christian Leadership Conference also set out to stop racism and these protests in the South. Nonviolent Coordinating Committee set out to stop racism in schools, and they formed in the 1960s. Riders were blacks and whites who rode a bus around the city to stop segregation. The Rights Act of 1964 stopped racism in schools and jobs. The Indian movement gave Native Americans their rights back. Islam despised whites and wanted their own state. The Black Panthers fed poor black children and also helped out many other African Americans. Civil rights in Florida. Florida led the South in lynching in proportion to the rest of the population. They also had a bus boycott in Tallahassee in 1956. Landmark Supreme Court cases include Plessy v. Ferguson, Brown v. Board, and many more court cases. W, otherwise known as United Farm Workers, were formed by Cesar Chavez. They set out for better wages and living conditions. They did this by boycotting. Panthers fought against ageism against older Americans, and they also sued many drug companies for blocking generic drug production. Camp David Accords is when President Carter created peace between Israel and Egypt in 1977. Iran hostage crisis was when 52 Americans were held hostage for almost a year and a half. OPEC, otherwise known as Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, were a group of countries in the Middle East that exported oil. Also, they boycotted the US and other countries for trading oil with Israel. PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, was formed in 1964 for independence, but then made acts of terrorism later in the 1970s and 1980s. The process was made so people in the Soviet Union could speak out freely without fear. The fuck is this for? Apartheid was a law that separated whites from blacks in South Africa. The, otherwise known as North American Free Trade Agreement, was made to remove tariffs between the US, Canada, and Mexico. This was the best trade agreement ever by the US. Globalization made it easier to communicate and transport goods to other countries. It also gave us faster technology.